So welcome back to another episode, and yes, the episode is called How Gaming Failed Me, and it has. It's failed me a bunch of times over the years, and it's been very, very painful. And I'll ask you guys, have you ever experienced a moment in gaming where it failed you? Was it hardware? Was it a game? Let me know down below. Okay, I got about 4 things to get through, and I just want to say, hang out to the end, because I have a really emotional ending to this episode that I'm really looking forward to doing. I'm going to revisit something I haven't talked about in 17 years.
Bye.
Okay, we have to go back to 2020. Yes, that legendary year of amazingness, and something was getting released, and something that made me very excited, and that was a release of the TurboGrafx Mini right here. And as many of you know, I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and I fell in love with this console. It meant the world to me.
The home video game console released in 1989. This machine captured the hearts of many gamers.
So for them to do a mini version of this that I could hook up to a TV and play some of those old games on HDMI, count me in. So I was very excited about it. I made many, many different videos about this console, spreading the love. In fact, I had a cable guy come over here. I was installing some cable for me, and I sold him a TurboGrafx Mini because he came into the games room and he's like, oh my God, he goes, I remember the TurboGrafx. He goes, I used to play Blazing Lasers at my friend's place all the time. And I'm like, well, guess what? I said, you can play that on the TurboGrafx Mini. This was exciting, or was it? This majorly failed for me. It's a major fail because it died. Yes, it overheated and died, and I gotta explain how. So how it happened, it was last year on my 50th birthday. There was something I wanted to do, and I talked about it for a bit. My friend Andrew was over from California. I had Kim, and we were going to do something kind of amazing. We were going to hook up the TurboGrafx Mini and play, yes, this great old classic, Dungeon Explorer here, where some of the worst box art in human history. Me and Andrew and Kim are going to play this game tonight. It's just pure coincidence. Dungeon Explorer.
Yeah, it's part of the reason I came here this time.
So I spent a bit of money. I bought the multi-tap so my friends could play with me, because it's a multiplayer, dungeon exploring game. And I bought a couple of extra controllers here for the TurboGrafx Mini. These are the PC Engine versions, but they also work on the TurboGrafx as well. And so we all gathered around, we hooked everything up. My moment, finally, I press play, I press the power, and all of a sudden, I can smell burning. And I'm like, what is going on? What is going on? You know, this has happened to a lot of people, especially with the TurboGrafx Mini, especially, is the USB ports got fried. It seems there was a problem moderating the power, and it burned out the USB ports, and you just smell smoke. You're like, what is that burning smell? Like, what's going on? And the thing, this is dead to me now. Yes, I can replace the chips in there, but what a big pain in the ass. And here's another thing. For anybody who got the PC Engine version, the Japanese version, they corrected this. So it was just a bad bunch of chips going on there. And so I was absolutely mortified on my birthday. And so we decided to hook up the Analog Duo, and we played it that way as well. But I just thought it'd be a quick plug and play thing. And so I just want to say, for anybody out there who didn't buy a TurboGrafx Mini, good for you. You saved yourself some money and some heartache, because this has happened to nearly every friend of mine that owns a TurboGrafx Mini. Yeah, and this machine has gone up in price over the years. Completely not worth it, because it will probably fail. And I'd use this machine probably around 30 plus times, no problems, until I wanted to do Dungeon Explorer. And it's sad, because that's another thing I just wanted to lightly get into that failed me. The TurboGrafx failed me in this country. It really did. It was one of those consoles that was released back in like 1989, and it was competing against Nintendo and Sega, and it didn't stand a chance. And I gotta say that back then, yes, remember Sega and Nintendo, there was also this, the TurboGrafx. And every once in a while, I love opening this up and showing this. making sure this is connected right. Me and my family heavily invested in a TurboGrafx and the CD-ROM attachment right here to play CD games like Eastbooks 1 and 2. And what a machine, amazing stuff.
Ultimate in radical technology, TurboGrafx CD. It uses the immense memory of CD software to bring you super intense game-playing action.
But you know, in the end, it failed me. And it's one of these failures that haunts me to this day. I still think of the what ifs. If we got a lot more Japanese titles out here, we got Rondo of Blood or something like that. There was so many great games left in Japan that we could have got, but we just never did. And the potential of all those RPGs that we never got as well. And the TurboGrafx just collapsed under its own weight of trying to compete with Nintendo and Sega. And it's one of these ones that over the years has always haunted me. And it's one of these ones I look at my shelves and I just love this era in video games. I was like 15, 16 years old at this time, all the way up to like 18 when the TurboGrafx kind of died.
Get turbocharged with TurboGrafx 16.
I supported it fully. I talked to all my friends back then. This was before I had a show. I was telling everybody in the neighborhood about the religion of the TurboGrafx 16. And so it was sad that the TurboGrafx failed me in the past and also failed me in the future with the TurboGrafx Mini.
And since TurboGrafx CD is a real audio CD player, you can slip in any one of the sizzling games or any standard audio CD disc and get rocked by mind-blowing CD stereo sound.
Now we have to go back to the year 2005. Yes, that way back machine, back to that era, because something was getting released. And I was excited about it. You know, I really liked the original Xbox. I thought that was a great console, a lot of great games on it. I embraced it. I embraced an American machine, and it was really supplying some great games, like, you know, obviously Knights of the Old Republic, Halo was fantastic. And we were getting the Xbox 360 in 2005, and I remember working so hard back then, saving up all my money and going, I cannot wait for the weekend when I can play this great RPG, Oblivion. That was a launch game. That was a selling point to me for the Xbox 360. And over the years, I bought so many 360 games, it hasn't even been funny. And do I love the machine? Yes. Is it a great machine? Yes. Did it fail me? Oh my God, yes. All of you must remember, and for some of you who don't, that's why we're doing this episode, the Red Ring of Death. It happened to me. It happened to me. I walked in all cheery one day going, I can't wait to play my Xbox 360. I press play and I'm like, what is that? What is going on? And I'm like, no, because I had been reading about it at the time. This was happening to a lot of different people out there. Their Xbox 360s were dying on them and they were getting this red ring of death, just the red going around. And I'm like, no. And I was so disturbed. But there was a light at the end of this tunnel. Yes, I got it fixed and it was working, but I never liked this Xbox 360. I felt so temperamental. I'm like, when's it gonna die again? When's it gonna die again? I didn't trust the hardware until they released the Xbox 360 Elite right here. And you know how I got this console? It's really funny. At work at the time, they were looking at ways to improve the building and make it like safer and better and all this. So I designed this device, I'm not gonna get into it all, that would make the building safer. And it won, and the prize for winning was an Xbox Elite. So I won this for coming up with an idea to save the building where I worked at the time. So this Xbox right here actually means a lot to me, and I felt a little bit safer with it, even though I know some people had some problems. I'm telling you, Xbox and their hardware over the years has been very, very hit or miss, and with the Xbox 360 originally, with the Ring of Death, it was a big miss. Now I get to the point in the video that is the emotional bit for me and something that I've really wanted to talk about for a long time. And I'm going to show some items that I've never shown. One of them I did 17 years ago, but one of them I've never shown that I had to dig up. It was kind of lost in the game collection, and I was really happy to find it. We have to go back to Sega for a second. And yes, Sega ultimately failed in the hardware department. And I just got to talk about it for a second, that it was very heartbreaking for any of us that were Sega kids. And I was a Sega kid. I grew up with the Sega Master System, Phantasy Star, all of those great games. Into the Sega Genesis, and then obviously into the Sega CD, which didn't do too well, and 32X that didn't do too well, and the Saturn that didn't do too well. It was a hard time to be a Sega guy, man. It really sucked. And it's been hard over the years seeing them when they finally came back with the Dreamcast. And I had a small tear in my eye, and they were Sega. And I just want to say this at this point. This is going to sound like a really unusual thing, but the Dreamcast era and Sega was so Sega.
Dreamcast!
And it's because they embraced who they were as a company. They were able to laugh at themselves. They were able to show all of their old IPs and do them justice, bring in new IPs. We got Skies of Arcadia. We got so many amazing games. Shenmue. This machine was on fire, quite literally, because it would finally burn up and fail. And I've got to say, I don't say this too often, that it broke my heart. And it still breaks my heart to this day. Sega's still around. And they're doing well with the Sonic movies, don't get that wrong. But they're not the Sega of the Dreamcast era and the Sega before that really honored their franchises. And yes, they've got some brand new, Sega games coming out like Golden Axe. And back to Crazy Taxi, that's coming back as well. That's exciting. We even have Shinobi coming back. That's great. But yet there was a Sega that was lost, and a Sega that we will never get back. And I remember the John back then freaking out. He was freaking out. He was so upset. And he was like, I didn't go in forums and get angry at people, but I was upset. I was upset about the fall of the Sega that I held so tightly in my hands and loved so much. And that's where we get into the true emotional bit of this video, where I can show something that's beautiful. I want to thank GameSack for some of the footage, because I remember 17 years ago when I got this footage, I had to film the TV. It was the only way I could do that. And that was for Sega's Swan Song. Sega's Swan Song. And that is for Sega Gaga. And I know everybody's going, what is Sega Gaga? This is something that only came out in Japan. It is a game. This is the special edition. It's very hard to find now, and it's gone up way up in price. I remember I got this for about $100, and I thought that was kind of expensive back then. It's gone way beyond that, into the $600, $700 range, which is crazy. And this is the special edition of it. Comes with a shirt and some other things, obviously with the game. What a beautiful time. What a beautiful time. What this is, what Sega Gaga is, it was a game that was pitched to Sega, and they're like, oh, we don't really know. And the guy behind it's like, no, honestly, this is a great thing. It was an RPG where you play as Sega, and you're competing against all the other video game companies, and what your job to do in the video game is to make the best games possible and to raise the shares and the money value of your company, which is Sega. It's so weird because it's mimicking what was going on with Sega and the big battles they were having at the time and how they would ultimately lose. And so they almost, by pure accident, made the Swan Song to Sega. And it came, look at this beautiful package. It came with this like beautiful notebook in here, the game, just mimicking the original Sega logo there. And you play these two characters trying to save Sega. And the Dreamcast was trying to save Sega. And we were rooting for it so very, very much. And I was so hoping this game would come out over here, and obviously it wasn't. It was so Japanese, it was so quirky, so unusual, and so fantastic that they would never take a chance releasing it over here. And over the years, there's been so much talk about a fan translation of it, and it's just never come to be. And I've been waiting like 24 plus years now to get this game. The only thing that I could get was something I dug up. This is the item. Look at this. This is a very fascinating item. It is a VMU for Sega Gaga from back then in the Master System colors, if I remember right. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that so nice? A VMU for Sega Gaga. And that final swan song to Sega.
Hi.
And whenever I think of Sega Gaga, I don't know what it is. I get so emotional, and there's so much love in the game. There's so much love for the old IPs and everything that made Sega, Sega. And you know, the Fantasy Star characters, they were honoring Alex Kidd and all those old IPs, Golden Axe. And they were built upon these franchises, and all of them are in Sega Gaga and are honored, as they should be. Where I find nowadays, there's a new generation at Sega, and that old generation of Sega has kind of moved on and has kind of disappeared, and some of the old love has disappeared. Yes, they're still bringing out some of those old classics as well, but Sega will never be the Sega of that time. And they had to do a transformation into a software company, no longer a hardware company. And that's why Sega Gaga comes in. And I've got a little Easter egg for anybody out there. Do you know how hardcore I was about Sega and Sega Gaga? That I made a Happy Console Gamer movie 10 plus years ago now. This is a fan movie. But throughout the entire movie, I'm wearing a Sega Gaga shirt. Isn't that wild? And nobody even mentioned it. Nobody even noticed. I think people just thought it was like a Sega shirt or something like that. But I personally made the shirts. I did one of those things where I went into the mall and had them, I took the logo and had them put it on. And it was my way of honoring Sega. And I even used the light gun from the Sega Master System as my gun that I used in the movie. And that's also a gun from Zillion as well, an old anime from Japan. And I just wanted to honor Sega, and I hope I've honored Sega. I don't know why. I've been thinking about Sega Gaga lately, and it's really just kind of upset me about the old Sega days and how I miss them, and how there will never be another Phantasy Star single-player game ever again. Because that's not where Sega is nowadays. And even a sequel to Skies of Arcadia, something like that in the RPG zone. Never mind, a modern Golden Axe, which they are going to bring out, but we've seen a tidbit of it. I'm looking forward to seeing what they do pull off with that. So I will ask you guys, how has gaming failed you? Was there a company that you loved that went out of business and you're like, no? There's been a few of those for us over the years. Tell me down below, how has gaming failed you over the years? So anyways, guys, until next time.